Nicolae Ceausescu, a name synonymous with iron-fisted rule. His story is one of ambition, ruthlessness, and ultimately downfall. Born into poverty in rural Romania in 1918, Ceausescu's early life was marked by hardship. His family, peasant farmers, struggled to make ends meet in a Romania grappling with poverty and political instability. Ceausescu's humble beginnings fueled a burning resentment towards the existing social order. He found an outlet for his frustrations in communism, joining the Romanian Communist Party at a young age. His dedication and ruthlessness within the ranks did not go unnoticed. He quickly rose through the party, proving himself a capable and unyielding communist. The young Ceausescu's rise coincided with the tumultuous years of World War II. Romania, caught between the Axis powers and the Soviet Union, became a battleground. During this period, Ceausescu's communist activities led to his imprisonment. It was in prison that he met Gheorghiu Dej, a leading figure in the Romanian Communist Party. This encounter would prove pivotal in Ceausescu's life. Following the war, Romania fell under Soviet influence and the Romanian Communist Party seized power. Ceausescu, now a trusted lieutenant of Gheorghiu Dej, was appointed head of the armed forces. He used this position to consolidate his power base and eliminate rivals. His ruthlessness, honed during his years in the party, was now on full display. When Gheorghiu Dej died in 1965, Ceausescu seized his chance. He maneuvered himself into the position of General Secretary of the Romanian Communist Party. His grip on power, once tenuous, became absolute. Romania, under Ceausescu, was about to enter a new and darker chapter. Ceausescu's early years in power were marked by a period of relative openness. He defied the Soviet Union by refusing to participate in the Warsaw Pact invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968. This act of defiance won him international acclaim and a degree of autonomy from Moscow. Ceausescu cleverly cultivated an image of Romania as an independent nation within the Soviet bloc. He pursued economic policies that differed from the Soviet model, seeking to modernize Romania and reduce its dependence on Moscow. This period of relative openness, however, proved short-lived. As the 1970s progressed, Ceausescu's rule took on an increasingly authoritarian character. He consolidated his power, crushing dissent and establishing a cult of personality. His image adorned every street corner, his pronouncements broadcast endlessly on state-controlled media. Romania, under Ceausescu, was becoming a nation in chains. Central to Ceausescu's grip on power was the Securitate, his secret police force. The Securitate infiltrated every aspect of Romanian life, instilling fear and paranoia. Informants were everywhere, reporting on any perceived dissent. Torture and imprisonment were common tools used to silence opposition. Ceausescu's economic policies, initially promising, proved disastrous. His drive to repay foreign debts plunged Romania into poverty. Food shortages became commonplace, with citizens enduring long lines for basic necessities. The contrast between the opulence of Ceausescu's regime and the poverty of the Romanian people became increasingly stark. Despite his repressive policies at home, Ceausescu continued to cultivate his image as a maverick on the international stage. He maintained relations with both the West and the Soviet bloc, playing one off against the other to extract concessions. This delicate balancing act, however, could not mask the reality of his brutal regime. Ceausescu's Romania became a land of contradictions. He presented himself as a champion of developing nations, yet his own people were mired in poverty. He spoke of national pride and independence, yet Romania remained firmly under his totalitarian control. The West, eager to exploit any cracks in the Soviet bloc, turned a blind eye to Ceausescu's human rights abuses. They courted him with loans and diplomatic recognition, fueling his megalomania. The Romanian people, meanwhile, suffered in silence. Section 5. A crumbling facade, the seeds of discontent. By the 1980s, the seeds of discontent were firmly sown in Romania. Economic hardship coupled with political repression created a volatile atmosphere. The Securitate, though omnipresent, could not suppress the growing anger of the Romanian people. Ceausescu, seemingly oblivious to the plight of his people, continued his grandiose project. He embarked on a campaign of systematization, demolishing historic neighborhoods to make way for monumental buildings that served as symbols of his power. This only served to further alienate the population. The Romanian Orthodox Church, once a pillar of support for the regime, began to distance itself from Ceausescu. Clergymen, witnessing the suffering of their parishioners, could no longer remain silent. Their sermons, increasingly critical of the regime, provided a rare glimmer of hope in an increasingly oppressive society. Section 6. The Winds of Change, Gorbachev and the Unraveling of Ceausescu's Grip. The winds of change sweeping through Eastern Europe in the late 1980s did not bypass Romania. Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of glasnost and perestroika in the Soviet Union had a ripple effect throughout the Eastern Bloc. Ceausescu, however, remained unmoved, clinging to his Stalinist model of governance. The contrast between the liberalization occurring elsewhere in Eastern Europe and the stagnation of Ceausescu's Romania became increasingly stark. Romanians, exposed to news of reforms in neighboring countries, grew bolder in their demands for change. Ceausescu, sensing the growing unrest, doubled down on repression. He tightened his grip on the media, further isolating Romania from the outside world. The Securitate, empowered by Ceausescu's paranoia, cracked down on any hint of dissent. But the tide was turning, and not even Ceausescu's iron fist could hold it back. Timisoara, the spark that ignited a revolution, the Romanian Revolution, when it finally came, was sparked in the western city of Timisoara. In December 1989, protests erupted in support of Laszlo Tokes, a Hungarian-Romanian pastor who'd criticized the regime. The Securitate moved in swiftly, attempting to crush the demonstrations with brute force, but the protests in Timisoara proved to be the tipping point. Images of the violence smuggled out of the country ignited a nationwide uprising. What began as isolated demonstrations quickly transformed into a full-blown revolution. Ceausescu, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the uprising, addressed the nation on television. However, his attempts to placate the protesters with promises of economic reforms fell on deaf ears. The Romanian people had heard it all before. They demanded his resignation. Flight from Bucharest, the dictator's desperate escape. On December 22, 1989, as protests engulfed the capital Bucharest, Ceausescu and his wife Elena made a desperate attempt to flee. They boarded a helicopter and escaped the capital, their reign of terror seemingly coming to an end. However, their escape was short-lived. The helicopter, low on fuel, was forced to land. Ceausescu and his wife, now fugitives in their own country, sought refuge in a rural area. Their freedom, however, was short-lived. The Ceausescus were apprehended by the military, which had by now sided with the revolutionaries. Their capture marked the end of their reign and the beginning of a new chapter for Romania. A trial and execution, the swift end of a regime. The Ceausescus were put on trial by a hastily convened military tribunal. The charges against them were numerous and damning: genocide, undermining national economy, and abuse of power. The trial, broadcast live on television, captivated the nation. Ceausescu, defiant to the end, denounced the trial as a farce. He refused to recognize the court's authority, claiming he was still the legitimate leader of Romania. His pleas, however, fell on deaf ears. On December 25, 1989, Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu were found guilty and sentenced to death. The sentence was carried out immediately by firing squad. The swiftness and brutality of their execution shocked many, but it also served as a powerful symbol of the end of an era. Legacy of a tyrant: Ceausescu's enduring impact on Romania. Nicolae Ceausescu's legacy is a complex one. He was a ruthless dictator who presided over one of the most repressive regimes in Eastern Europe. His policies plunged Romania into poverty and left an indelible scar on the national psyche. Yet Ceausescu's Romania was not without its contradictions. He defied the Soviet Union, charting an independent course for Romania in foreign policy. He oversaw a period of economic growth in the 1960s and 70s, albeit at a terrible human cost. In the aftermath of the revolution, Romania embarked on a long and difficult journey towards democracy and economic recovery. The legacy of Ceausescu's regime, however, continues to cast a long shadow. The scars of his rule run deep, a reminder of the fragility of freedom and the human cost of tyranny.